Yay! We're back. Oh my goodness, that was so. We've had this happen this morning. So a couple of times the power is just like going out,
Yeah.
and then it comes back on in a few minutes. So
Yeah, it's
yeah, they're doing some work on the street. So I think
uh,
that's they're hitting something or whatever.
yeah,
But yes, we're back to
we're
talk
back.
about this special lady.
That's so good to see it in your hands.
Oh, it's been such a serendipitous journey for me, really, to read it.
I
So
gathered that. I mean, your very generous recounting of your middle of the night inspiration was, it had synchronicity and serendipity and magical connection all over it. The way we met has that, and you're reading my book, My Serendipitous Journey Through Equus, and you're all about synchronicity with horses. It's mind blowing, heart opening. It's real.
it is so real. And Nancy, it's been such so refreshing for me to meet somebody like you and somebody who sees the horses through the same lens, and there are more and more of us kind of coming
Yeah.
to the surface as the horses attempt to heal humanity, which I truly believe is what they're doing. And it's been really refreshing to have this in my hands and to read it and to feel like I'm reading in some ways a reflection of my own journey with the horses. And I feel like your book will speak to that in others that do pick it up and read it. And I feel like it will be that reflection for people who maybe don't necessarily know how to articulate what they've experienced with horses.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also it's um, maybe going to be something a little different out there in the world of readership and the market, et cetera, all those levels, all the nomenclature, that I'm not somebody who was a horse person from a little girl. I'm actually not the 8-year-old girl who dreamed of having a pony. I'm not the 10-year-old girl that climbed a fence and just jumped on a horse and galloped. I can't even believe there are children who, I can believe it because I believe horse people when they tell me their stories, but it blows my mind that 10-year-olds were just getting on horses on the top of a fence and just taking off together, having a good old time, coming in for lunch, telling mom and pop about their day. I wasn't that. I did bring my 2 daughters to Rhodes End Farm in New Hampshire for like 3 or 4 summers in a row. They'd stay for a few weeks, and then I'd pick them up. I just more or less did a few nose to trail rides along the way. So how this came about that I went on that retreat, a horse retreat, put my hand up for a horse that was, I think, advanced for me. And now here I am, him and me, been together 10 years. It's not
Oh,
riding, just being together. I think he called me. He kept me safe on his back. He was a fast horse. He was what they say, a lot of horse for me. Kept me on his back, and then I, moved across the country for him, and we don't ride together. We be together.
well, we are human beings for right. We're not human
Right.
doings. We're human
Exactly.
beings. So he's teaching you the way of the human that perhaps we're all meant to learn. And I can relate to that too. I've got 4 horses here that I'm privileged to care for, and none of them are ridden. And one of them actually, he turns 10 on April 1st.
Ah,
And oddly enough, it's April Fool's Day, and he is the biggest joker, always keeping us on our toes, and my greatest teacher. And we've had him since he was born, and he's
nice.
10, and he's never been backed or mounted or trained, and he really has, he really walks with that wild spirit of the horse,
Yeah.
and his name is Spirit, and he really embodies that wildness that we hope to preserve in ourselves and in our child and in the world, because we've drifted so far from that wildness that is who we really are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the horses really are calling. And again, I come from, I'm an attorney by profession, desperately seeking to retire in the next few months. One of my horses, Dalai Lama, has just yesterday come out of some surgery, fetlock surgery. So mom took out an extra credit card, and mom will continue to work a few more months. All good. You do for your children, your animal relatives and such. But I believe the horses are calling, and I say that as somebody who's been an attorney, and wherever you sit with the left brain, right brain, I kind of keep that open. But to the extent that one is the analytical part of the brain, I've certainly had to be analytical, uh, keeping money floating for the family, all those practical and analytical things. So when I get a shot of somatic awareness, an intuitive hit, um, I just don't take those things lightly. Um, when I say that Cherokee called me to him, that's a big deal. That's not a casual statement for this Western analytical person. I've lived in both worlds. I've practiced meditation and such, but I just don't take for granted when something hits you in your body knowledge, or all those things, the intuition, the somatic awarenesses, an animal communication, a telepathic experience. I don't take them for granted ever, and I give gratitude the second they happen. Um, I was taught that by a couple of animal communicators, Anna Twinney, my friend Bill Pelkey, Nancy Windhart. There's some people who have tapped into communicating, and what they've all assured me of is that you have to honor every one of them. And I just say, I just err on yes. I err on the yes. So I'm constantly giving gratitude for little hits, big hits. They're all big in a way. That they come through is big.
And I think that's likely why you're receiving so much intuitive insight, because of that gratitude. I've always said gratitude is like that key. It's like that key that opens up the whole world for us, right? And I know there's a resonance there. I can feel again, right?
Out of my skin here.
Well, it's interesting, Nancy, and our journey together in this short time has been very interesting as well, because again,
Yes.
there's a lot of reflection happening for me, and I'm, probably safe to say for you as well. But
yeah.
For me, it's interesting because I also worked in law for 5 years.
Oh my gosh.
And I worked in real estate. So very, left brain, but it was a means for survival, really, right?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
it was a
yeah.
career path and it was survival, and I still loved what I did, like even in those capacities. But I always had that draw to intuition and to animal communication and to connection and creativity, because we are that just as much, right? So
Yeah.
in modern day society, it's largely built on left brain stimulation, and it's kind of sad because we're losing a lot of that wildness, that and that freedom that is embodied through the right side of the brain and in the physical body and the energetic bodies, the etheric bodies. So like there's so much else happening that's not being nurtured in modern day society, but the horses are bringing us back, and connections like what's happened between you and I, it brings us back. And, so hopefully in hearing this conversation that we're, very, spontaneously having this recorded and to share it with others, hopefully it will inspire others to make that connection when it happens as well, and seize that moment of intuition as something that is really meaningful and really important, if they're not already doing so, right? Because I know a lot of people are awakening to that. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions. One of them is, when did you start writing this incredible memoir of your experience with horses?
Well, luckily, I have a decades-long habit of journaling. I'm a massive journaler. So honestly, if I cheated, I cheated with myself and from within myself, because I was able to repair to lots of journaling. I mean, I had my journal, then I color coded my journal entries once I realized that I think there's a story that I need to tell here, because when you journal, you're writing to yourself. You wonder when somebody will walk into your closet when you're long since gone, and that magical moment when they open it up and see your journals, or maybe you share them while you're still on this side of the rainbow bridge. But basically, you're having a conversation with yourself when you journal. And I have been compelled to do that for years. Um, and when I realized that I wanted to write the book, um, maybe even before that, I started color coding my journal entries. These are about animal communication experiences I was having with the horses. These were poem snippets that were coming through, book ideas. That was a different color. So when I went to write the book in June of 2017, it's been a while now, I was able to repair to a heck of a lot of journal entries. Um, and then I wrote and wrote and wrote. And then fast forward to the last 6 months with a professional editor, Melanie Mulhall. She showed me that I couldn't really have quite as many journal entries as I wanted in there. It just needed to change some of that around a little bit. But basically, because it's not such easy reading to constantly have journal entries. There are a few in there in the book, but primarily it was really helpful to have those journal entries. Memory can be
Yeah.
tricky, but if you
Oh,
take your notes,
well, it's so interesting because again, that resonance, I have a stack of journals and my programs and even our farm has been really built on the visions that came through in those journals. Right. And I know how real that is because I've lived it as well. And I know so many of our listeners will have also lived through that journaling process and just
Yeah.
how magnificent it can be when we allow ourselves to connect with ourselves, right? And with like the divine. And I feel like it's almost like conversations with the divine. Like even though we're talking to ourselves, it's
It
that
is.
part of ourself that's connected to the sacred and to the divine that we're talking to, right? So it's
Sure.
a very special place to connect to within ourselves. And I love that, that you're bringing that into this conversation because it's such a big piece, I think, to this book. And the poetry in the book is just beautiful. Obviously this isn't what they're going to be seeing when the book is released. It's got a beautiful cover designed by your daughter Hannah,
Yeah,
which
it's
is
beautiful. I'm so excited.
stunning.
I'm so
Oh,
excited.
it's
I'm
stunning.
so excited.
And I've actually followed her now on Facebook to sort of see her artwork and see her
Yeah,
connection to her art. And that's a whole nother interview because
yeah,
her art is something else and it really speaks to my
phenomenal,
heart.
really.
Phenomenal. So I actually want to get in touch with her over the next little while in divine time when
Nice.
I might need some help with some art. There's a couple of things that I
Sure.
saw that were just really spoke to my heart. But there's
Nice.
a couple of books that come up for me in our conversation that
Oh,
are
tell
kind of
me.
reflected. I'm going to tell you this one by Lynn Mann.
Yeah, I saw in your email that little snippet about her fictional series. I was so
Yeah,
excited.
I'm telling you. So for me, I haven't been largely drawn to fiction. It's just not something that I
Right.
read a lot of. I'm a
Yeah.
studier. I've got books and books of study, and I get the feeling that you likely are too.
Right.
But this book series, the first one is called The Horses Know.
Mm,
Yes, and what it's about essentially, in a nutshell, is um, people. There's certain ones that are chosen as horse bonded. So she refers to them as the horse bonded, and they get called by their horse.
mm.
And when they receive the call, they must go on the quest.
Whew, I'm getting like a whoo through my body.
Yes, yes, because I feel that you understand that quest of
Mm.
having to go. And even if it totally defies, I mean, you were an attorney practicing in New York, like even if it totally defies what you kind of are doing in that moment,
Yeah.
it's like you have to go on this quest.
Yep.
And we've both experienced that quest. And so many others have as well. And I just love how she puts it into this fantasy kind of story, something that is so special, that is something that's very real, that like we've experienced in real life, and lots of
Yeah.
other horse people have experienced in real life, where they get this invitation, this call, and it can't be ignored.
I'm so grateful that you recommended it, because I really have very sweet memories of curling up with a good book of fiction. I mean, sweet, sweet memories, hours going by, coffee, cup of tea, whatever it be, curled up, blanket. Um, and at the same time, not but and at the same time, I'm much more drawn to nonfiction in these last several years. It's just where I need to be in my evolution. I need to hear people's stories from the juice and blood and flesh, from the sinews of their being.
Yeah.
But this one, you've hooked me. I want that book. I'll
And
get that.
I'm telling you, and I felt the same. I was like, I I am in a place where nonfiction is I've been in that place for almost 20 years now, but where it's just been study, 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 and really, like you said, really indulge and embrace the experiences of others, and the knowledge of others and the wisdom. But it's interesting because this particular series and this particular author, I still feel like it's largely coming from that place, but it's got this fantasy kind of twist to it that can take you into that, like, those hours going by and curled up, and
Yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
can take you there. Another one that comes to mind is, I'm not sure if you've heard of Michael Singer.
No.
Okay, so
Maybe I've
this,
heard of his name, but not that book.
you might have heard of this one, The Untethered Soul.
Yes, I have that.
Okay, so this is his second book.
Oh,
It's called
wow.
The Surrender Experiment.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, this
Oh,
one
wow.
is all about saying yes.
Oh my gosh.
And
Okay.
that's something that I heard you say in our conversation, is about, you're just going to say yes. And
Err on the side of yes.
yeah, and that's what that book is all
Thank
about.
you.
Yeah, you're
Oh,
welcome. So a couple of really awesome book recommendations there for you and for our listeners today. And please share, anyone who is watching, you can share in the comments some of your book recommendations.
I
That
have one. Yes.
please do.
I do. And you're going to love it, because we have in common the magnificent Melissa Pierce.
Yes, we
Um,
do.
I have her in common, because I ended up graduating from her Touched by a Horse certification program with equine gestalt. I met her through serendipitously being presented with her cards, and you have her cards, and like, wow, wow, wow. So Melissa wrote a book called Epona Lisa,
Okay.
fiction. You will love that. The goddess of the horses, Epona Lisa. It's got a little bit of that fantasy element to it. She is writing. It's supposed to be for 4 seasons. I think Epona Lisa is the fall season. Melissa is nothing if not active, busy. Her gestalt, her number one value is making a change. So she's very engaged in lots of different books and lots of different entrepreneurial events. The Touched by a Horse Equine Gestalt program, and those other 3 seasons are apparently underway. But you'll want to check out Epona Lisa.
Oh, I definitely will. I love Melissa Pierce's work. I absolutely love her and adore her. I haven't had the absolute privilege of taking her program as yet, but it is one of the many on my bucket list to experience in this earthly lifetime. So I'm really hoping to get out there and study with her at some time. I just can't. I mean, I get a sense of how amazing it was from your book. I can only imagine how that experience would be with someone so connected as Melissa. I get her daily wisdom messages, so they come to my email.
Yeah, yeah.
And the connection to some of those cards, I'm going to give one little example here. So when we were, so we sold our farm. It was a sort of a COVID inspired sale, our old farm. We had built a 6,000 square foot wellness center on the farm, and it was empty for 8 months.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was a huge space to clean, to maintain, to heat, and to not have anybody in there. It just felt like the right time to downsize a little bit. So bought another farm. It's lovely. We absolutely love it here. But anyway, at the time when we sold the other farm, we had nowhere to go. But we had such a good offer on a very difficult property to sell. and we had a fantastic offer with a solid buyer, and we just couldn't turn it down. Like, that call, right? The horses were like, no, you've got to do this. You've got to do this. So anyway, we sold it. We had nowhere to go. So I still have my real estate license. So I was checking every day on my backdoor database, what's new, what's coming up on the market. And anyway, so rewinding about 3 weeks before, I had registered for an art retreat for this day. I didn't know that on the day of that art retreat, I was going to essentially not have anywhere to move my horses and my family. So we come to the day of the art retreat, and I'm thinking, I said to my husband, I don't think I can go all day and be away from the computer and be away from the real estate market and not be able to see the hot new listings and what's coming up. So I go to the bathroom and I check my phone, and Melissa's message comes in, or Wisdom's message comes in. And I don't remember the exact message, but I remember the essence of the message was that today you are to express yourself, kick up your heels. And it was all about creativity.
Wow.
So I look at my husband, I said, I just got this message from my daily wisdom from Melissa Pierce, I said, and it looks like I am supposed to go to the art retreat. So went to the art retreat, did a abstract painting, which I love doing. And a lot of it was with my fingers, and I sat back and just looked at it and felt it. And when the piece of art came together, it ended up looking like what my father described, because I texted him a picture, as a forest coming to life.
Wow.
So, okay. And there was like a horse in there as well. I get home from the art retreat, put the canvas on the front porch, run inside, check the market, what happened that day while I was away from the computer. A property's on the market. Wonderful price, beautiful property. I summoned my family. I'm like, we're going right now to see this. We go out within 3-4 hours. We had an offer in on it and bought it. So here we are. And the interesting thing is it's got a huge red pine forest. The trees are probably about, 200 feet tall. They're just massive. And behind the forest is the horses. And so it's the forest coming to life, as my father said.
That, yeah.
So her messages and her cards and her wisdom has been prominent in this adventure with the horses, and just again, that serendipitous timing and the divine timing of what comes through from her. And so thank you for bringing Melissa into the conversation, because I think that may resonate with some people as well.
Yeah, for sure. The serendipity is it's just a very interesting journey, because I'm nothing if not eclectic. I'm not inclined to only have this way of believing how the world is, but not this way. It all can come in. I'm certified in Reiki 1 and 2, not the master level yet. That's coming this summer. Excuse me. But one day I was offering Reiki to the horses as I saw their big behinds trotting down the lane. And I just was moved to practice some Reiki. I've done more of it on animals than people, really. And then all of a sudden my mantra came in, because I had been initiated to TM back when I was like 18. And kind of a tortured history of irregularity with the mantra. I'm not this person who without fail has meditated twice a day for 30 years. I'm really not that person, but the mantra is with me. And there are times when I'm disciplined and other times when it comes, and I always love when it comes. And while I was offering this Reiki in the field, as the horses trotted down a lane, the mantra came to mind. And I thought, yeah, that'll work. I'm eclectic. I'll have Reiki going here, and there'll be mantra as well, and it'll all work together. And it's kind of like that with the serendipitous journey through Equus with the book and getting to Colorado. Yes, a lot came through as I was meditating under a tree at a retreat and knew I would be going to live with Cherokee in Colorado. And at the same time, then I came home and rolled up my sleeves and did some really practical things, had to give my law practice to somebody, open up a little savings account. And so it all works in there. You can have the vision, and you cannot sit back and do nothing. You can move your body through the practical steps as well. I'm not comfortable saying that one takes over the other. Am I making sense?
I love that. Yeah, you make sense. It's like, and I like I like the use of the word eclectic. Like, I love that, because even in yoga, as a yoga teacher and someone who trains yoga teachers, a lot of times some of my students will come and say, Fortini, I haven't been on my mat. Like, I feel so bad. I haven't been practicing. And I'm like, you know what? Give yourself some credit, because actually life is yoga. It's on and off the mat,
Yeah.
right? Like, we don't have to be on the mat every day to say that we're living a yoga life. And I think I love the sense of like that word eclectic, and just allowing in what needs to be there in the moment. So if in that moment we have to be driven by the left brain, or in that moment we have to be driven by practicality and analysis, then we have to be grateful for the gift that we have that resource within ourselves, right? And that we can work with that when it's needed. And then coming into the intuition and whatever modalities have touched your life, and being able to work with those when needed, right? So it's that, like, that flexibility, and that is yoga, and that is life, is like allowing ourselves to not be so affixed on that predator vision of, I have to be doing this, and I have to be disciplined, and I have to be doing this every day without fail, otherwise I'm a failure, right? Like, it's like, no, I can like go there today, and today I need to be here, and I can draw in or hear the different parts of myself when I need to.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, life is very full. I'm glad to have a rich inner life, and a mind that can think, a heart that can feel. And one of the kind of what do you call a sweet dilemma, a sweet quandary in the Touch by Horse program, you're encouraged to see if there's a niche with which you'd like to work. Some people graduate from the program and work with uh, people who have come back from wars. One of the women is doing Horses for Heroes, people suffering from PTSD. Other people there's another woman who's working with people who have had eating disorders, and there's different arenas. And I had thought, and I started working with women, seeing where they want to go with their lives, and their transitions into different careers. And then it's morphed, and I'm more inclined now to like the 10, 11, 12-year-old children who are being bullied. I see female, and that could be because I have a couple of daughters, but I'm open, again, open. If there's a young man, a boy who would need that help, it's feeling more to me like I'd like to have the horses and me co-facilitate to help those young people before they're 40 and 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds thinking about their changes in life. It's all in. It's where you're inclined to.
And it's interesting because your horse Saint came through very clearly just now as you were
Really?
talking. Yeah.
Well, then I'm going to blow your mind,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
Anna Twinney communicated with, she communicated with all three of my horses back in like 2011, and then more recently she came and she did some more a distant communication. When she communicated with Saint, she said that she knew nothing. Anna doesn't want to know a lot of details. She wants to tune into the horse, of course. She looked up at me and said, Saint will be very good with children. Children can be all around him. They can be on him, under him, but you'll have to protect him because he won't say no easily. He's a very dear boy, but he'll be fine with children. And then you're saying that.
Well, I read in the book about just the sense, I don't know if it was something specifically written or if it was a sense I was feeling about him sort of being, maybe having difficulty feeling a sense of belonging.
Yeah. Yeah.
So sort of a sense that I was feeling, and that he would probably be a really wise teacher for these young people.
Yeah. Yeah, I have in the book one, oh man, the circumambulations are just wild. At one point I was out in the round pen with Saint. I spent a lot of time with my horses alone, and even to this day, the equine practice has been not a large operation. The last time Anna was communicating by distance with the horses, just like about a week ago, she said, so Dalai Lama is showing me that you have a bubble world. You're basically, all of you are in this bubble together. You're a really very close family unit. And I said, yeah, that's true. So one day I was out with Saint in the round pen years ago, when I was still living in Colorado, not when I'm now in New York. And I had this intuitive hit. Saint will be his purpose in the coaching, if you will be to help people stand without fear.
Mm.
That was the phrase, stand without fear. And I knew at that moment in the round pen that it wasn't going to be just fear of horses, because he was picture perfect. You could really get over any fear of horses being with him. But at the time, the intuitive hit was more expansive. I knew it was going to be that he would help people stand without fear in life. And then fast forward, not to give away too much in the book, it turned out that he ended up helping me stand without fear at one
Wow.
very important point along the way, which is in the book.
Yes, can't wait. I'm on page 87.
Oh yes,
So
that it comes a little later in the book, but it turned out, and I knew it in the moment. Oh, Saint is helping me stand without fear. Oh, how about that? The circles are just so delicious.
aren't they though? And
Yeah,
there's so many of them
there's so
in
many.
this work with the horses. It's like they are, offering us this biofeedback and this like real-time reflection and real-time information that doesn't, you know, it's not prejudice. It doesn't discriminate on our past. It doesn't, judge. It's real time, it's honest, it's reflective, and it gives us an opportunity to peer into ourselves and see ourselves in a way that's very clear. And I think clarity and groundedness are two of the most common words that I hear from clients over the past decade of sharing this practice with horses. It's been two of the most common words to hear is clarity and groundedness.
Yeah, so as I'm coming to know you deeply, just straight into that lovely heart of yours, I suspect there's a little bit of modesty there in terms of what your work with the horses are without having been through, for instance, Melissa Pierce's program or any other programs. Clearly, you're connecting to the healing capacity in horses. There's a whole wealth of knowledge in you for sure. And I think it has to do with that being open to what they're there to share. You're listening. You're
Yes.
listening, so you're hearing.
Yes, and I have taken programs related to equine facilitated learning, and I've married a lot of the yogic sort of philosophies and knowledge in with the passion for the horses, because I feel like they are the gurus. Like I can't say that I've met a human, like a true human guru. Like I think humans, just as our nature, are very flawed, and it's a perfect imperfection. Like our
Yeah,
flaws are what guides our journey, really, right? So it's a perfect
exactly.
imperfection and nothing that I would ever want to change. But the gurus lie in nature, in our interspecies guidance that is offered to us,
Yes.
and that's where for me the true teachers are. Everyone who comes through my programs and I'm the teacher, it's very clear right from the beginning. It's something, one of the first conversations we have is that we're sitting here as equals. Like I'm not sitting on a higher chair. I'm not sitting in a place of more knowledge than anybody else.
Yeah.
I'm humble and I'm listening. And just as much as my students are learning in the programs, I'm learning from them and from the horses and from what's unfolding within the program. So it's pretty amazing what I've been able to experience with the horses as my teachers and as my partners in this work and as my family, really.
Really.
I mean, I know you relate to that. I love how you call them your animal relatives, and You know, it's
Yeah,
just such a nice way of kind of bringing them in, you know.
yeah, it's not, and it's funny, it's not a, not in the least bit like a cutesy phrase, or it's genuinely the
Yeah,
only way I can possibly relate to, express how I relate to them. And I don't really, honestly, I don't cringe when people say I have a pet. Honestly, the word is
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Um, Not so crazy about owner. Owner doesn't hit me. I don't get
Yeah,
angry.
that's one of my triggers too.
But
Yeah,
these are cultural. We have to be, forgiving of these cultural habits.
absolutely.
If people say they own a horse, they own a dog, that's fine. If they have a pet frog, it's all fine. This is my expression. I'm inclined to call them my animal relatives because that's how I experience them.
Yeah,
I
it's true.
truly do. What you said before about clarity and groundedness and certainty. One of the things I did learn in the Touch by Horse program, and blew my mind. Melissa would have people go into the round pen, and I have people go in and ground themselves too with the practices that I know of. If somebody has their own grounding practice, like you say, we're all equals. I let them ground themselves, or I walk them through whatever.
Yeah.
But grounding, centering, and then I saw this in the program time and again, and with my own horses, when people are grounded, not up in their head. The horses want to be there. They'll come to the center to join. The client will go out to the rails and start walking the perimeter. And guess what? That horse is on the inside shoulder. And then she would experiment, actually. I felt bad for the horses because it was so dramatic. She would ask somebody to get into their head, start telling their story, either in their head or aloud to the group, but be in their head, not grounded in their body, rehashing something old. And darn, if the horse, I saw a dramatic picture of this, a video that Melissa showed. The horse stopped short, literally took a jolt back, like a little electrical charge came. It was almost a little painful to watch.
Yeah.
And then she had the person uh, turn around, start walking in the other direction, back in their heart space, back in the now, bringing to mind what was most dear to them. Afterwards, the person said it was their children, and they were living in the love they felt for the children. The horse immediately said, oh, okay, we're back in real. Okay, let's go. So I hope I'm describing it well. It
Oh,
was actually
yes.
hard to watch. I felt
Yeah.
bad for the horse.
Well, and it's just more evidence to that, like real-time feedback, right? Like that honest real-time feedback without prejudice. Like they're not,
Yeah.
there's no judgment attached to it. This is honest. This is what's happening energetically and being reflected back.
Yeah.
When we talked for a second, just going to rewind a little bit to when we talked about the term, owning a horse or owning a dog. And again, it's without judgment, because we can only work with what we have been taught or what we know.
Yes, yes.
And it's always been a little bit of a trigger for me when, people say I own, but I understand, like, I know that it's coming
Yeah,
from an innocent place of,
yeah.
what they've learned and how they've been taught and whatever. But I like to sometimes approach it with humor, and I'll say, come on, let's be honest, those horses own you.
Anyway,
Right. So, that's always a nice way to kind of lighten
that's
up that mood,
beautiful.
because it's true, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, but 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 I was walking, and I walk every morning with my buddy here, Otis, who's exhausted from our walk this morning. And I walk every morning, and a few weeks ago I was walking, and I noticed a tiny, tiny little bird's nest. And it must have been the nest of either a very small sparrow or like a hummingbird. Like it was
Mhm.
just literally like just tiny, tiny,
Wow.
tiny. And I stopped the walk, and I started to really look at this nest. And I looked at every strand and the materials that were chosen and how it was put together. And I said to myself, this bird did not go to a certification program. It did not go to a course to learn about how to create this brilliant design to
Mm,
hold its babies.
Yeah.
And I thought, and this is the way my mind works, right? In my heart, it's like just really going deep into nature's teachings.
Mhm.
And I said to myself, this bird learned this through ancestral wisdom, so the innate
Yeah.
wisdom of just being a bird, and
Mm.
also by observing,
Yeah.
right? By observing how the nest it was born in was made, or the nest of its,
Yeah.
future nests. So anyway, and I
Huh.
thought to myself, so in reflection to that, and in contemplating that, it's clear that we also build from what we know, or what we're taught. So I guess what I'm getting at is like we a lot of times in modern day society, we're kind of scooped up from our ancestral wisdom and from our
Yep.
innate abilities and our innate gifts to be communicating with animals and to be
Yep.
in this interspecies communion. We're kind of scooped up from that as soon as we're able to pretty much walk, and we're
Yep.
put into these programs like preschools and schools and institutionalized to work that left brain
Yep.
and sort of abandon the knowings that we have to
Yep.
build those fabulous, brilliant pieces that we were born to build. And that was a huge hit for me when I got that insight from this little nest. And it
Yep.
was like, that's why I work with a lot of equestrians and a lot of horse people, and stand completely without judgment, because I know that anything that's coming in that's not pure from the horses, it's only coming in because of something they've been taught, or something that they have been taught in their schooling, right? Like in their schooling. And it's
Yep.
not to say that I'm standing here with all the right information. No, not at all. The horses have the information, right?
Yep.
Like we have to be the observer, and we have to listen, just like the birds have to learn how to build those nests. So
Yeah.
for us to build those connections and those deeper ways of being, as you
Yeah.
mentioned earlier, being with the horses, and it has to come from the horses schooling, like the horse schooling us on what they need and who they are, and how we can, how they're going to invite us into their world and into their space.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's so much there for Kini. You've said probably 5 chapters of your book, which is going to be written.
I'll be sending you the manuscript to read.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. I believe you have a working title, but it is not mine to put forth in this recording, and in
Thank
your
you.
due time you will do. But you've said so much there. Oh my gosh. Um, the value of having an editor like Melanie Mulhall, she's great. Melissa uses her as well. The value of having an editor who gets
Mm,
this kind of work is that you can use the word knowings like you used, and she doesn't bat an eye, and she works very much with the Chicago rules of editing and writing. She's not mamby-pamby, she's an award-winning editor, so she toes the line, is that what it is?
yeah.
At the same time, she gets that the word knowings is in the book. There's no discussion of it, and when it
Yeah.
went to proofreader, the proofreader was made to know, because he works with her, that knowings is in, awarenesses,
Yay.
knowings, awarenesses. That's an important word,
Yeah.
knowings. There's just so much to what you said. When you're talking about the bird nest, I see things not only in an eclectic way, but in triads. I see the number 3, and you said 3 really important ways that the bird had that knowledge: the ancestral knowledge, the innate birdness, and through observation. That's where my mind goes. I love triads. And I think that's one of the lessons we can really
Mm.
learn for ourselves: our ancestry, our innate beingness, and observation. That's just you've just shown me another beautiful triad in nature. So I'm appreciating that.
Thank you.
I'm
And
honoring that.
it's amazing, isn't it? Like it just, and thank you for reframing it that way, because that's really helpful as well, to kind of sort of hold it in that container of that triad,
Yeah.
which is quite beautiful way to hold it, and to be able to kind of integrate it.
I don't think you've gotten into the book yet. Did you get to, I don't think you're at the chapter where I have about 6 or 7 different coaching pieces. I don't
No,
think you're there. That it's called
no,
My Horses, My Partners.
no,
And
I
it's
don't. I
one of
think
the,
that's in 2 more chapters, I think, from where I
yeah,
am.
I
Yeah.
think you're going to like it, Bikini. I'm sure you're doing some work like this.
And
I
I
could.
oh, and I love your poetry. So this is another thing I wanted to mention about the poetry. So I actually have poetry books, and I'm not saying this to toot my horn, but I'm saying this to show the synchronicities about what the horses are bringing out in us.
Well,
So
yeah,
it's so at this time when I'm talking about, oh yeah, I've done this too, it's not to say like, oh yeah, look at me. It's to say, look at this, like, look how the
goodness,
horses, like, what are they bringing, what are they extracting from our humanness?
it's
And I
exactly
find,
how I receive it.
thank
Exactly
you.
how I receive it, of course.
And I think that that's fascinating, because if you look at yogic history, 5,000 years ago, that's what the yogis did. They wrote poetry.
Hmm,
So it's
really?
just interesting to me
Wow.
that that's what's being extracted. So again, going back to that triad that you beautifully pointed out in the last conversation about the birds, going back to that, what are we really tapping into when we're connecting with the horses?
Yeah,
Our ancestral wisdom, our innate beingness, and observation.
exactly. Exactly. That's beautiful. It's just beautiful. In one of my coaching pieces with Tamara, um, I reframed what she said. She read one of Melissa's wisdom deck cards, Whispers from a Horse's Heart, Melissa's deck. I often start sessions by people picking a card. And then so Tamara and I talked a little bit about the card, and then into the round pen she went. And then she came out of the round pen. I won't describe what happened with Saint in there in the book. She then came and sat back down, and she said 3 words within a sentence or two, and I reframed for her. It was honor, surrender, and release, as she was talking about honoring her ancestors. So this is another little hit.
Wow.
Yeah,
Mhm.
she was honoring her ancestors and releasing some baggage she didn't need, connected to family, and being able to just feel surrender. So I framed it for her. I gestured in the air. I said, Tamara, this is, and I made sure she knew that it was her wisdom. That was so
Yes,
important.
yes.
It wasn't mine. It came through her. That it was, honor, surrender, release. It was a triad, and she still remembers it to this day.
Yeah, I think that's a very wise way of, like I said, kind of packaging it for us. Like when wisdom comes through, you're kind of reflecting it and sort of offering it back in a way that can be held. And I really like
Yeah.
that. I find that for myself, like what sort of how you just facilitated that with my piece about the
You're
bird.
going to see triads all over the
I
place.
love it. I'm
Yay.
gonna hold that with me right here in my heart chakra.
Good.
Um, I have received so much from this conversation, and
Ditto. Ditto.
oh, and from this book so far. Can't wait to keep going. And I just want to close our call with a poem from your book. Can I share a poem from your book?
Please, how honored am I?
So this poem was the first one that hit my heart. It's at the very beginning, before you get into the chapters. It's called Questions. Will you be my easy keeper? Filling up on the joy I'll feed you. Be nourished by love, dive deep and deeper into the peace that this will lead to. Will you graze upon my love by day, by night, and gorge upon my delight? Feast upon my adoring sighs, get drunk on the tears in my eyes. Will you be my easy keeper, filling up on the joy I'll feed you? Be nourished by love, dive deeper and deeper into the peace that this will lead to. Brings tears to my eyes reading it, just because these horses and their ancestors have served us humans in ways that I don't know if we're even aware of, even us who have dived deep in. It's just, there's so much that they have given. And I'm humbled to be joining with more and more humans who are on this path of giving back to the horses, and to really honoring who they are and who they are to us and who we can be to them, and encouraging us to be better and better and better humans, for each other, for the horses, and most of all, really for the planet and for our children, you know. Nancy, I can't thank you enough for taking this time to join me and to share yourself and your heart and the wisdom of your horses, and of course your exciting, exciting adventure here with your book. I can't wait to see it on Amazon in copy with your daughter's beautiful artwork. And please send infinite love to your herd of horse teachers, your family, animal relatives, and your horse that's recovering, Dalai Lama, who's recovering from her surgery.
Thank you. I'm going to be exceedingly brief, and all that you've just shared with me, I share back to you. Truly, it was such a beautiful send off. I'm going to say namaste. I'm going to send you my love. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sure we'll be meeting again.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
So we'll talk soon.
We will.
All right, Nancy, take care. Thank you.
Blessings. Thank you.
Many blessings. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.